Alright, so for this tutorial, I'm going to go over starting a brand new zoo from scratch and make it profitable in about 45 minutes of actual playtime. But I will cut out some of the speed throughs. So here I'm just starting picking my zoo. It's a brand new zoo. I'm just going to title it New Zoo. Alright, so you got a blank canvas here. You could start off by going into the menus, changing the animal settings to not age as fast. I usually put them up to 2. And also you could disable the collision options, which is helpful when building in the future. Alright, so the first thing you need to start is staff buildings. I usually set those just off to the side. I don't use any decorations on them, just the bare basics, because this is to set up just a starter zoo, so that way you have a foundation to build in the future and have money. Also move the trees out of the way because they just bother me. So you got your keeper hut and the break room for staff. The vet surgery building, research building. That should have been a workshop. I'll fix that in a second. And the quarantine and animal storage. Get all the paths set up. The pathing in this game is a little finicky sometimes, but I find if you just mess with it, you usually can get what you want. Sometimes there's other tricks, and there's a lot of path tutorials out there. Especially Pawsley has a few, I believe. Alright, now you want to do the main guest path. I set it to 8 because it matches up with what's there pretty much. And just make a straight line. Again, you don't need to do anything fancy. This is just starting a brand new zoo, so that way you have money. And then you can go back and decorate and fix things up as you want once you have everything established. Once you have staff buildings down and the path, then you want to set up just a real basic square habitat using the brick wall. And again, nothing fancy, just real basic square habitat for now. I usually take the habitat, raise it up to 3 meters. That usually covers everything. And then once you get that where you want, put in the windows for the viewing area. Now that you have that, make your path for the viewing area off of the main one because you don't want a bunch of congestion with guests in one spot, one area. You want to place down all your donation bins, put an ATM by the entrance so that way they could get money. And then you want to put it down a few benches near the viewing areas, and then trash cans in a second here because guests just throw litter on the ground if there's not a trash can nearby. Next, to finish off your basic habitat, make sure you put down some information screens. Again, just as basic as possible. Just plop them right there on the wall against the glass or the pillars, and then put in a couple speakers. The reason this is important is after that last update, guest education, the higher education they have, the more money they want to spend. So you want to keep up on that. Now you hire your staff, just hire one of everything except for a vendor for now. And we don't need to worry about work zones or anything like that. I don't worry about work zones until you're well out of the main entrance area. Set your habitat so that way everyone checks on it every 3 months, except for the keeper every month. That just helps keep it up so you don't have any problems or broken barriers and stuff like that. Now you want to get your animals. Usually you won't have very many conservation credits, so you want to look at cash listings only. Here we got lucky and there's some jaguars which are really high rating for cash, so that's what I decided to go with. If you don't have the South America DLC, then those wouldn't be available, but you can see there's plenty of good animals for cash only now. So you want to get the highest appeal rating animal you can for your first ones to bring in people and money. Alright, now you go to your animal storage. Your animal storage should only just have the 2 jaguars that you bought. So here we're just trying to pretend that this is a brand new zoo, brand new franchise, everything. As you can see, in your franchise zoos, your animals carry over. If you have them in the trade center from one zoo, you could get them in another zoo in your within your franchise series. First thing to do is send them to the quarantine, so that way if there's any illnesses or injuries, it's caught and fixed. And then once you get them to quarantine, hit the play button and go ahead and just basically wait for them to be ready. Alright, so once they're ready, just select them, send them to the habitat. I accidentally got one extra one when I was buying them in the animal market. So first thing you want to do once you get your animals in there, pause it, set all the education screens and speakers to the jaguar or whatever animal you got in there. Make sure that the radius of the speakers has some good coverage, but you don't want any overlap. If the guests get into that little overlap area, they're unhappy, and it just causes problems. So you can either make it smaller or move it, whatever you want. Just make sure there's zero overlap. Next, you want to click on the animal, and get their welfare up. If you have an unhappy animal, guests will not be happy. It'll just cause a lot of problems. So in this, I'll show you for your starter one, just do the very basics, as basic as you can to save money and time. And you just want to get their welfare rating up. So I use here there's the real basic shelter. Put down some bedding. And make sure you put down their food and water source. And as far as enrichment, since this would be a brand new zoo for you, you wouldn't have any research done. But I'll talk about that in a second. So I don't think there would be any available enrichment items. But as you can see, research also carries over from zoo to zoo in the franchise now, ever since the 1.2 update. So the Jaguars have a climbing requirement. Since you won't have any researched blueprints for climbing frames, and if you don't want to mess around too much with making your own, you could use the habitat, the nature, to fulfill their climbing requirement, which I'll get into after I finish landscaping it, so it gets up to 100% and they're all happy. I hit play to make sure their hard shelter is good, so they're 100% on terrain. For environment, you want to make sure you go to their correct biome and continent. Here it would be South America, and we go to South America, North America, tropical, temperate, and grassland. And then what you also want to do to handle their climbing requirements, go to properties and click on climbable. And this will give you trees that not only meet the environment needs of the animal, but also the climbing need. And just put down just enough to get it into green. Again, you don't want to spend too much money. It's not going to look real pretty. It's just a real basic habitat to start your first zoo off in a profitable way. You can go back later and just spend all kinds of money on it after a while, your zoo will be well over a million dollars, and you could do anything you want that you could in the sandbox. And as you can see, the trees up their climbing needs. I don't want it to be right at the bare green level, because if it is and they have babies, then it'll go down into yellow. And I put some of these plants here to kind of screen them in their shelter, since it's not one-way glass, because sometimes they get a little sketchy, and don't like a crowd of people watching them, and the plants help. Also, that's why I put down these security keep quiet signs. That also seems to help reduce the animal stress level if they don't like crowds. And the last thing you want to check right here, what I'm doing is check their traversable area in the habitat. If there's any kind of escape points, they'll show up as those little red exclamation bubbles or whatever. So it's always good just to make sure, because you don't want escaped animals, because then it makes the guests run away, and it's a bad situation and costs money. You want to do research, get your mechanic researching barriers. You want to get to that one-way glass as soon as possible, so that way you can get the more skittish animals in. And set the vet to be researching whatever animal you first put in, because again, higher education rating equals higher income. All right, so now we're in year 2. Another thing that is worth mentioning is to do all the little challenges that pop up. Usually most of them just kind of do themselves. You don't really have to focus on them. Also, if there's a community challenge up that applies or you can do with your starter animals, go ahead and do that, because you get a lot of conservation credits for completing milestones in the community challenges. Now, as you can see, we're doing good with profit wise for year 1. And our guest happiness is all up in the green. You don't need to worry about food or drink or toilet or anything like that. For now, we'll get to that after the second habitat. Alright, so in year 2, with a good profit margin, you could start make your second habitat. Again, just a second real basic square. You don't want to spend a lot of money or time on this. It's just to get your zoo started. So just follow the same principles as the first one. So I skipped ahead of the little building, and I went ahead and purchased 2 Komodo dragons, since they are animals from Asia continent, and that would meet the community challenge requirements for them to breed. The only other staff building you need to add is another research center, because you want to have a vet researching the Komodo dragon or whatever your second species is, to increase education rating. And again, set the viewing path a little off of the main path to avoid congestion. And same as before, place all the information screens and speakers and trash cans and benches and donation bins. All right, once your animals are done with quarantine, same as before, have them sent to the new habitat. As soon as they land in there, pause it so that way you can set up their terrain and everything again. Again, be aware of the any overlap and avoid any overlap with the speaker coverage. Alright, so I edited out some of the habitat building and then skipped the force forwarding, and now we're into year 3. So as you can see, the profits are really high. So now in year 3 with high profits, we'll put down guest facilities since the guest number is over 300. I always use the Planet Zoo pre-made blueprints just to get the scenery rating up higher and makes guests happier. So first put down the bathrooms. And then you're going to want to put down the Gulpy soda, which would be the only one you have available if you're starting a brand new franchise and have no research done. You get all the other facilities through the mechanic research. Put down a Chief Beef, and then put down an information center. Put that at the beginning, at the start of the zoo, right there at the entrance, and I'll go over that in a little more detail after. And then put down merchandise. Again, the only one available if you're starting brand new would be the balloons store. And just place these kind of wherever you can, just right there in the beginning, because once your zoo has a whole lot more money, you'll probably go back and redo this entire entrance area if that's what you would like to do. Make sure everything's connected to the paths. Everything should have electricity, since you have a whole radius from the entrance building that gives you free electricity, so always try to stay within that in the when you're starting a zoo. Hire an extra vendor for each place you put down. Now for prices, I don't change any prices except the audio guide, and I bring that just down to where it'll be 0 profit, and that way people will actually buy them. If it's at the default price, I've noticed guests just don't buy them, but if you set it to 0 profit, so only 75 cents for the guest, they buy a whole bunch of them. And as you can see here in the education overview, that the more guests are using those, the higher education rating goes. Higher education rating, higher income. Alright, so I skipped ahead to year 4. So here we are in the beginning of year 4 with a really high profit margin, and it just looks like prices are going to go up from there. So at this point now you have a zoo started. It's making money. It'll keep making money. No issues, no problems came up in the entire time playing up to this point. If you want, you can just keep it running. You can start again slowly adding more habitats, or at this point you can start building a really good habitat. Train your staff up, the ones that are feeling overworked. Add into the staff center a perk. Usually I do the staff PR one, makes guests happier. And then that's pretty much it for your starting a profitable zoo. From this point on, you could do whatever you want with it and start really building some awesome habitats and buildings and just whatever you want. Enjoy. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And for the rest of this video, just enjoy the view of this baby jaguar.